Welcome to this edition of East West. I'm Philip Shaw, chiming in from Dresden, Ontario, Canada, here with my colleague, Dr. Enamul Haque from Dhaka, Bangladesh. And this month, we're going to be talking about the continuing problem of the COVID-19 epidemic that's changing our world. And we've talked about it a few times in the past. We're now kind of in the height of the second wave of it, or at least we hope it's the height of it. It's really manifesting itself around the world. Some countries are in the second wave, some are in the third wave. Here in Canada, we have about 660,000 cases of COVID-19, and we've had almost 17,000 people die from COVID-19. And it's getting particularly dangerous in the largest provinces of Canada. The largest one that I live in here in Ontario, we have lockdowns, there's a curfew in Quebec, and we might have the same thing coming here in Ontario. So it's really had quite an effect on everybody that lives here and across the Western world. And I know it has in the Eastern world as well. But it's interesting, when you look back over the last year, everybody had a problem with 2020 because it was so difficult because of COVID. But I was reading an article just recently that Dr. Haque has written about the origins of COVID. And even when we were together last year in January, COVID was with us in 2019. It might have had a different name, but it was starting to manifest itself before it got to the point where it is now. And Dr. Haque, if you could just chime in a little bit on the origins of where this all came from and some of the nuances and things that you came up with in the article that you wrote about the origins of COVID-19 and where we are now.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to everyone. I think this is, we have done quite a lot of episodes on COVID, and COVID has been a problem with the world for the last whole year. In fact, when I was searching on how did it come, everyone knows that it is coming from Wuhan, which is Wuhan, China, which is true, but it is not fully true. And that's very interesting. I was looking at WHO documents, and the WHO document started COVID separate news report on January 20. And that report came out of Wuhan's case. But before that, it was probably in, if you think, and I was looking at it, it was in the Saudi Arabia, known as MERS-CoV. That is how it started, and 6 out of 15 died at that time. So they have listed that as a variant of MERS, and that's how they have listed it. And then there was a second quite big actually, between June and November 2019, almost much earlier. It was in Denmark, in the mink farm, and that is where they have listed 214 people. And out of that, they found out majority of them are from mink farms, and there are some locals. So when I looked into this, and that's time they have listed it as SARS-CoV-2. So you realize the MERS and SARS were the two major diseases, and that's how they've listed it. The final listing, and this is the Wuhan came, that has happened between December 31st and January 7. Within that time, the Chinese authority reported not SARS, not MERS, but a new pneumonia. So they actually thought it's a new pneumonia and reported it. And that's how the Wuhan case, it was 44 people in Wuhan first recorded, and they thought it's a pneumonia. By 11th of January, they actually created the genetic code and they told everyone in the world, and WHO particularly, that this is how you can separate it, and it's a new virus. So that's how the coronavirus started in terms of the idea. So technically speaking, yes, it is from Wuhan. But if you really look into the coronavirus episode, it started in Saudi Arabia, it started in Denmark, and from Denmark, it was also in UK, quite a lot of people in Qatar. So quite a lot of people were affected at that time. And from China, the story actually moved very fast, much faster than before. So what happens between January to 11, I think by January 11, the Chinese government, in fact, gave them the safety measures and the codes, everything they gave, and they wanted other laboratories to test. So by January 12, WHO understood that this is a new variant, this is a new one, and they decided to report it separately, but they waited for 14 other labs across the world, which WHO listed, to test it and see whether this is true. So after this, on January 20, they decided to have this separate listing as COVID, coronavirus. So that's how the thing started. And from then on, until about middle of, towards almost like a February, middle of February, it was all over in China. It was also in Japan. It was in Korea. It was in Thailand. It was in quite a lot of countries. I have listed it. A lot of countries were affected. And on January 25, they gave the 24th, they gave the first alert, aviation alert, that flight alert, that anyone flying, and I think you probably got home by that time from Bangladesh. So by January.
It's interesting because, I flew over to Bangladesh on January the 16th. And when I listened to you quote these days, these dates and when this was happening, like we were all quite concerned. But at the same point, it was such a different world back then. And
exactly.
And, we flew to Bangladesh. We went to a few other places. We took off from Bangladesh, came home. We had to answer the question, did we visit Hubei province in the city of Wuhan when we got home? But that's all we had to say. And I just find it fascinating that you were able to read the World Health Organization report and talk about Saudi Arabia and Denmark and places like that. I mean, it seems so science fiction like now. But of course, the vaccines are here, and that's been kind of a long and winding road, how we got to that place. For instance, in the UK, they started with vaccines. They got them in the United States, now in Canada, some of the Western countries, and Israel and East Asia as well. And I know in Bangladesh, there's plans for vaccines as well, possibly coming from India, maybe China. But you also talked about the vaccines somewhat in this piece, and could you enlighten us more on that?
Yes, in fact, this is very interesting also. I was then looking for vaccine. In fact, WHO, as early as in February, asked researchers to look for vaccine. That was also very interesting. It was much earlier than it was pandemic. By February, I think it was towards January, end of January, WHO and World Economic Forum alerted everyone on the PPE. So PPE supply chain problem that they alerted. And by March, it was pandemic. By March, it was 100,000 people already affected, almost in 100 countries. So that's a lot of people. And that is the time they predicted this, and vaccine development was going on. So thanks to the science, thanks to the laboratories across the world, who was actually one of the fastest way they could find out the vaccine. But the vaccine development requires a lot of steps, and that is where we are all stuck now. So if you think carefully, there were about, I was looking at it, 172 vaccines have been at least listed. So that's a large number. Out of this 72, there are only 60 vaccines actually went to the clinical test. So clinical test means this already laboratory test is done. It should go to the clinical test. And on the clinical test, they need stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Up to stage 3, they only try the vaccine on healthy people. So, and there are only 10 published reports so far, and this is from WHO on December 29th report, that they have 10 publications, scientific publications, and there are only about 13 vaccines that is on the trial in the third stage, technically. The biggest surprise came to me when I was looking at it, and they said, out of the 5 most popular vaccines that we all know, except for the Sinovac, which is the Chinese one, and the Oxford, which is the British one, none of them are actually in the real third stage. What I mean real third stage, they are not tried on the large number of big people across the world of different races, different age group, different diseases, because any medicine, before it coming to the shelf, coming to the doctor's prescription, they need to know exactly what is the side effect. So they need at least long time, particularly they need at least a year. And on that clinical trial of large sample, at least a year, Sinovac's report, they said there is due in October this year, and Oxford's report is due in July next year, 2022. So you can see this fast, the most important one, the most popular one, still a long way to go. And that's what the trouble is. The trouble is that at the moment, the drug is not prescription drug. The drug is not off the shelf, out of the counter drug. So what is this? This is actually experimental drug. And that drug, when you administer this drug, the biggest trouble is that who is going to take the responsibility of accidents? And at the moment, it is the governments who are doing it. So the way it works at the moment is all emergency medicine. It is worth giving to those people who are suffering, who are vulnerable. But every government is taking cue and trying to understand how fast they can get out of this, because this is a quite risky game. Coming back to Bangladesh and others, in fact, this is very interesting. Bangladesh is a big country and a small country. Big country compared to the population. Small country if you compare it to any other country like India, which is close.
Canada, for instance.
So when the trial of Oxford was going on, at the moment the trial is happening in Brazil. But the Indian trial is going to start, which means Oxford is allowing Indian pharmaceutical company to produce it on mass scale for trial. And that's what the story came. And as the Chinese came to Bangladesh, they also wanted a trial. For some reason, we did not really decide on it. We were fixed on Oxford vaccine. And at the moment, and obviously, when you look into this, the COVID, you have just mentioned, and I was surprised that out of 60,000 cases in Canada, 16,000 plus people died.
Yeah, almost 17,000. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a large number percentage-wise. In Bangladesh, we have 700,000 plus people affected, and the number of deaths is still below 8,000. So you can see that it's a quite different story. However, in India, it's actually much higher. So at the moment, the risk is that no country would like to give away vaccine until they fulfill their own demand. And that is why countries are all in trouble. WHO chief today actually gave a very interesting statement. I don't know whether I've seen it, but he made a statement, asked governments not to have any bilateral deal on vaccine supplies. They said that is going to collapse the whole world. In fact, we need the vaccine for everyone. If you are immune and I am not, the traveling, the way we communicate with each other across the world nowadays, it will be very difficult to contain it. So that is what WHO stands right now. Yes, Phil.
Well, with the change in the American administration, I hope that they're back with the WHO. And I agree, like we all have to get vaccinated. We all have to get vaccinated for this thing to work really well. Doesn't matter whether you live here in rural Canada like I do, or one of the most highly densely populated capital cities in the world like Dhaka, Bangladesh. Everybody's got to be part of the solution, and we all have to get the numbers vaccinated very, very high to make this work. So, as we look ahead in 2021, there's many, many challenges, and we'll hope that the next time we meet that we'll be able to say we're on the road back and to beating this thing. At least that's what I hope so anyway.
I think we have to hope for the best, but 2021 is not going to be, I'm not very hopeful on it. We have to wait until at least middle of the year. It will take all the way to maybe towards the last quarter of the year when we will get real big, light on the end of the tunnel, and we are hoping for that. Thank you, Phil.
And thank you very much.
Please subscribe to this channel to receive updates on new videos.